The research station hung in space like a metal flower, its silver arms reaching out toward the dead planet below. Dr. Hyunwoo pressed his face against the observation window and watched the orange dust storm swirl across Cathara's surface. 3 months they had been here, digging through ancient ruins and finding nothing but broken stones and empty chambers. "Another earthquake down there," said Dr. So-young, checking her instruments. "The mining team should be careful." Hyunwoo nodded but kept watching the planet. Something about Cathara felt different today. The storm seemed less violent, almost like the world was holding its breath. He had learned to trust these feelings during his 20 years as a xenoarchaeologist. Sometimes the dead planets whispered to those who knew how to listen. The communication panel buzzed with excited voices from the surface team. Commander Jae-min's steady voice cut through the chatter. "Control, this is Surface Team Alpha. We have found something big." So-young leaned over the radio. "Define big, Commander." "We need Dr. Hyunwoo down here immediately, and bring the heavy containment equipment." Hyunwoo felt his heart race. In all his years of digging through alien ruins, Jae-min had never sounded like this. The commander was a calm man who had seen battles across 3 star systems. Whatever they had found had shaken him. 2 hours later, Hyunwoo stood at the edge of a crystalline cave that had been hidden beneath Cathara's surface for thousands of years. The walls sparkled with natural formations that looked like frozen lightning, but it was the object in the center of the chamber that made him forget to breathe. The cube sat on a raised platform of black stone, perfectly balanced despite having no visible support. Each side measured exactly 2 meters, made of a material that seemed to shift between solid white and translucent crystal. Internal light pulsed through it in slow, steady rhythms like a massive heartbeat. "How long has it been here?" Hyunwoo whispered. Dr. Taeho, the team's engineer, ran his scanner over the platform. "The stone is at least 50,000 years old, but the cube itself registers as both ancient and somehow timeless. My instruments cannot get a proper reading." "Commander." Jae-min stood with his arms crossed, his weathered face showing concern. "The locals avoided this entire region for generations. Their oldest stories speak of a sleeping guardian that should never be awakened." "Local folklore often contains kernels of truth," Hyunwoo said, walking slowly around the cube. The surface seemed to respond to his presence, the internal light growing slightly brighter as he moved. Dr. Minho, their quantum physicist, was taking readings from a safe distance. "The energy signature is unlike anything in our databases. It exists in multiple dimensional phases simultaneously." "Is it dangerous?" So-young asked. Before anyone could answer, the cube began to change. The pulsing light grew brighter, and the air around it started to shimmer like heat waves. A low harmonic sound filled the chamber, making everyone's teeth ache. "Everyone back," Jae-min ordered, but they were all too fascinated to move. The cube remained solid, but something began to emerge from it. At first, it looked like white smoke or mist, but then it took shape. A head appeared first, long and serpentine, followed by a neck that seemed to stretch forever. Wings unfolded from the mist, translucent and massive, spanning the entire width of the chamber. The dragon was beautiful and terrible at the same time. Its body seemed to be made from the same albino material as the cube, shifting between solid flesh and pure energy. Its eyes were like burning stars, ancient and intelligent and completely alien. "Nobody move," Hyunwoo breathed. Nobody even breathed too loud. The dragon's head swiveled toward them, those stellar eyes focusing on each human in turn. When its gaze fell on Hyunwoo, he felt as if his entire soul was being examined and judged. The creature made a sound deep in its throat. Not quite a growl, but definitely not friendly. Taeho's scanner was beeping frantically. "Energy levels are off the charts. This thing could level the entire mining site." The dragon pulled back, its massive form coiling around the cube protectively. It watched them with obvious suspicion, ready to strike if they came closer. "It's guarding the cube," So-young observed. "Or maybe it is the cube, just in a different form." Minutes passed in tense silence. The dragon made no aggressive moves, but its presence filled the chamber with barely contained power. Finally, it began to fade, becoming translucent again before disappearing entirely back into the cube. The harmonic sound stopped. The oppressive feeling of vast intelligence lifted from the chamber. But the cube continued to pulse with that steady heartbeat rhythm. "We need to get this to the station," Hyunwoo said finally. "This is the discovery of a lifetime." Jaemin shook his head. "Moving it might trigger another manifestation. That creature could have killed us all without effort. Which is exactly why we need to study it in a controlled environment," Hyunwoo argued. "Do you have any idea what this represents? A dragon entity that can phase between dimensions, apparently linked to that cube. This could change everything. We know about ancient civilizations. Dr. Minho was already running calculations. We can transport it if we build a proper containment field. Keep it stable during the journey to the station. And if the dragon appears during transport?" Jaemin asked. "Then we learn how to deal with it," Hyunwoo said with more confidence than he felt. 3 days later, the cube sat in the station's main laboratory, surrounded by energy barriers and monitoring equipment. The entire crew had gathered to watch as the science team began their initial tests. The dragon appeared twice during the first week. Each time it seemed more agitated, as if their presence and their instruments were causing it distress. The second manifestation lasted 6 hours, during which the creature prowled the confines of the containment field like a caged storm. Word of their discovery spread quickly through the galactic communication networks. Scientists, military officials, and treasure hunters all wanted to know more about humanity's find. Some offered partnerships, others made threats, and a few simply stated they would be coming to see the cube for themselves. Hyunwoo barely slept during those first weeks. He spent every waking moment studying the cube and its dragon, trying to understand the connection between the solid artifact and the dimensional entity it contained. The more he learned, the more questions arose. The dragon was not just an animal or a guardian. It was something far more complex, something that existed between worlds and understood things that mortal minds could barely grasp. And somehow, after 50,000 years of isolation, it had awakened to find itself surrounded by curious humans who had no idea what they were dealing with. The real challenge was just beginning. 3 weeks after the cube arrived at the research station, Commander Jaemin stood in the briefing room facing a collection of the galaxy's most dangerous specialists. Word had spread through the star systems about humanity's discovery, and everyone wanted a piece of it. Master Controller Velthak of the Zenthari Empire stood nearly 3 meters tall. His forearms crossed over his armored chest. The neural crown on his head pulsed with soft blue light, connected to the battle computer. Grafted into his spine, he had controlled entire fleets of war beasts for the Zenthari military. "Your creature is nothing special," Velthak said in his mechanical voice. "I have subdued things far more dangerous than one-dimensional dragon." Dr. Hyunwoo looked uncomfortable. "With respect, Master Controller, this entity is different from anything we have encountered before." "All creatures have minds," Velthak replied. "All minds can be controlled." The Zenthari had brought their most advanced neural crown technology to the station. The device looked like a silver helmet covered in thin needles and glowing circuits. When activated, it could project controlling thoughts directly into any living brain. Dr. So Young monitored the Dragon Cube from the observation deck as Velthak prepared his equipment. The cube sat quietly in its containment field, showing only the usual steady pulse of internal light. "Beginning neural interface," Velthak announced, placing the crown on his head. The needles extended slightly, connecting to ports behind his ears. His eyes rolled back, showing only white as his consciousness reached out toward the cube. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then the cube began to glow brighter. The harmonic sound filled the laboratory and the air started to shimmer. The dragon appeared faster than ever before, materializing with what could only be described as anger. Its stellar eyes fixed immediately on Velthak, and it opened its mouth to release a sound that was part roar, part scream. The neural crown exploded. Velthak collapsed, smoke rising from the burned circuits of his battle computer. Medical teams rushed to save him, while the dragon thrashed against the containment field, its rage filling the entire laboratory with crackling energy. "Shut it down," Jaemin ordered. But the dragon was already fading back into the cube, leaving behind the smell of burned electronics and the unconscious form of the galaxy's most feared beast controller. Dr. Tejo spent 2 days repairing the damage to the laboratory systems while Velthak recovered in the medical bay. When the Zenthari finally woke up, his first words were a warning. "That thing is not an animal," he whispered. "It looked into my mind and saw everything. Everything. Then it burned out my neural pathways like they were nothing." The next attempt came from an unexpected source. Shinra, a crystal singer from the melodic reaches, arrived on a small transport ship that hummed with harmonic frequencies. Her people had evolved to communicate through sound and vibration, developing techniques that could calm the most savage creatures in the galaxy. She was tall and thin, with crystalline growths along her arms and neck that resonated when she spoke. Her voice produced multiple tones simultaneously, creating complex harmonies that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "Violence and control will not work," she told the assembled research team. "This entity exists between dimensions. It must be approached through dimensional harmony, through sounds that bridge the gaps between worlds." Dr. Minho was fascinated by her technique. "The quantum signatures do show harmonic patterns. If we could match the frequency," Shinra spent hours tuning her crystal growths to match the energy patterns coming from the cube. When she finally began to sing, the sound was unlike anything the humans had ever heard. It seemed to come from inside their bones, resonating with the fundamental frequencies of reality itself. The cube responded immediately. The light within it began to pulse in rhythm with Shinra's song, and the dragon manifested slowly, almost gently. For a moment it seemed like the approach might work. Then something went wrong. The dragon's eyes focused on Shinra, and instead of calming, it became agitated. It recognized her song as an attempt at manipulation, another form of control disguised as harmony. The creature opened its mouth and sang back. The sound that emerged was like Shinra's song but amplified 1,000 times, with harmonics that existed in dimensions beyond normal space. Windows cracked throughout the station. The hull plates groaned under harmonic stress. Several crew members collapsed with severe headaches. Shinra herself was thrown backward, her crystal growths shattered and bleeding. The dragon's countersong had not only rejected her attempt at harmony, but had actively attacked the source of what it perceived as a threat. Emergency repair teams worked for days to fix the structural damage to the station. Shinra spent weeks in recovery, her natural harmonic abilities permanently damaged by the encounter. "It learns," Dr. So Young observed during the post-incident analysis. "Each time we try something new, it becomes more resistant to that approach." Dr. Hyunwoo nodded, grimly, "And more hostile. The first manifestations were merely defensive. Now it seems actively aggressive toward anyone who tries to control it." More specialists arrived over the following weeks. A hegemony mind-bender tried to use psychic compulsion and ended up in a catatonic state. A voidwalker attempted to follow the dragon into its dimensional space and simply disappeared, never to be seen again. Each failure taught them something new about the entity, but also made it more dangerous. The dragon was learning their techniques, building defenses against future attempts. Worse, it seemed to be growing stronger with each manifestation. Commander Jamin called an emergency meeting after the 7th failed attempt nearly destroyed the laboratory entirely. "We are running out of options," he said, looking around the table at the exhausted research team. "Every expert in the galaxy has tried their best approach, and this thing has defeated them all. Maybe that is the problem," suggested Dr. Tejo. "We keep treating it like a problem to be solved, a creature to be controlled." "What else would we treat it as?" Hyunwoo asked. Tejo shrugged. "I do not know, but clearly our current approach is not working." Outside the briefing room, the dragon cube sat in its containment field, pulsing with steady light. 50,000 years it had waited on Cathara. Now it was awake, aware, and growing more dangerous with each passing day. The galaxy's greatest experts had failed. Traditional methods of control had proven worse than useless, And somewhere in the back of everyone's mind was the growing fear that they had awakened something that should have remained sleeping forever. The real test was yet to come. Specialist Dong Hyun sat in the corner of the observation deck, watching the dragon cube through the reinforced windows. While the senior scientists argued about their next approach, he had been quietly observing every interaction between the entity and its would-be controllers. He was young for a xenoarchaeologist, only 28, and his background was different from his colleagues. While they had studied in prestigious universities across the galaxy, Dong Hyun had grown up on Harmony Farm, a small agricultural colony where his family raised both earth animals and various domesticated alien creatures. His grandmother had taught him something that apparently was not covered in advanced xenobiology courses. She used to say that every living thing, no matter how strange or powerful, had feelings. And feelings, she insisted, were more important than intelligence when it came to making connections. "The creature is not evil," Dong Hyun said quietly. During one of the planning meetings, Dr. Hyunwoo looked up from his datapad. "What did you say?" "The dragon. It is not evil or malicious. It is scared." Master Controller Velthak, still recovering from his neural crown incident, made a dismissive sound. "Scared? That thing nearly killed me." "Because you tried to control its mind," Dong Hyun replied. "How would you feel if someone forced their way into your thoughts?" Dr. So Young leaned forward with interest. "Explain your reasoning, specialist." Dong Hyun stood up, feeling nervous under the attention of so many senior researchers. "I have been watching its behavior patterns. When left alone, the dragon is calm. The cube pulses steadily, like a resting heartbeat. But when we bring in control devices or specialists with aggressive intentions, it becomes defensive." "Defensive?" Velthak snorted. "It destroyed my equipment and nearly melted my brain." "Yes, because it perceived you as a threat. Think about it from the dragon's perspective. It wakes up after thousands of years to find itself trapped in a laboratory, surrounded by creatures trying to dominate its mind." Commander Jae-min rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "You think it is responding to our emotional states rather than our actions?" "I think it is responding to both, but emotions might be more important than we realize." Dr. Minho pulled up the quantum readings from previous encounters. "The entity does exist partially in dimensions we cannot fully perceive. It is possible it can sense things we cannot measure with our instruments. Like feelings," Dong Hyun said. "On Harmony Farm, we had a Rigelian storm bear that no one could handle. It had injured 3 handlers and destroyed 2 containment facilities. My grandmother walked into its enclosure with nothing but a bowl of its favorite food and a calm heart. The bear was eating from her hand within an hour." "This is not a storm bear," Velthak protested. "This is a dimensional entity of immense power." "Maybe that is exactly why the same principles apply," Dong Hyun replied. "The more powerful a creature is, the more sensitive it might be to the intentions of those around it." The room fell silent as everyone considered this possibility. It was so simple that none of the galaxy's experts had thought to try it. Dr. Hyunwoo looked skeptical. "Even if you are correct, how do you propose we test this theory? We cannot risk another incident like the ones we have already experienced." Dong Hyun took a deep breath. He had been thinking about this for days, and he knew there was only one way to find out if he was right. "Let me try." The silence that followed was deafening. "Absolutely not," Commander Jamin said immediately. "We have seen what this entity can do to trained specialists with advanced equipment. I will not send a junior researcher in there with nothing but good intentions." "With respect, Commander, the trained specialists with advanced equipment are exactly what have been causing the problems." Dr. So Young was studying Dong Hyun with new interest. "What would you do differently?" "I would not try to control it or study it or manipulate it in any way. I would just try to say hello." "Say hello?" Velthak's mechanical voice dripped with disbelief. "To a creature that exists in multiple dimensions and has the power to level this entire station?" "Yes," Dong Hyun said simply. "The same way I would say hello to any scared animal that had been treated badly by strangers." Dr. Taeho was running calculations on his datapad. "The risk is enormous. If Specialist Dong-hyun is wrong, he could be killed instantly. If he is right, Dr. Minho added quietly, he might accomplish what all our experts could not. Commander Jae-min paced the room, clearly torn between caution and curiosity. This goes against every safety protocol we have established. Our safety protocols have not been very effective so far, Dong-hyun pointed out. They have only made the situation worse. Dr. Hyun-woo looked at the young specialist with new respect. You are volunteering to enter the containment area alone, with no protective equipment, and attempt to communicate with an entity that has defeated every control method we have tried? Yes, sir. That is either very brave or very stupid, Dong-hyun smiled. My grandmother used to say those were the same thing. After hours of debate and argument, Commander Jae-min finally gave his reluctant approval. The entire senior staff would monitor from the observation deck, ready to activate emergency containment if necessary. As Dong-hyun prepared to enter the laboratory, Dr. So-young pulled him aside. What if you are wrong? She asked. What if it really is as dangerous as everyone believes? Dong-hyun looked through the window at the dragon cube, pulsing quietly in its containment field. Then I suppose I will find out very quickly. He walked toward the laboratory door, his heart pounding, but his mind calm. Behind him, the galaxy's greatest experts watched in fascination and terror as a young man from a farming colony prepared to do something that had never been attempted in recorded galactic history. He was going to treat the most powerful entity any of them had ever encountered exactly the way his grandmother had taught him to treat every living creature, with kindness, respect, and an open heart. The laboratory door sealed behind him with a soft hiss, leaving Dong-hyun alone with the dragon cube and whatever lay sleeping within it. It was time to find out if his grandmother had been right about the power of simple human compassion. The laboratory felt different when Dong-hyun was alone with the cube. Without the nervous energy of multiple researchers and their equipment, the space seemed calmer, more peaceful. The cube's internal light pulsed in its steady rhythm, neither brighter nor dimmer than usual. Dong-hyun walked slowly toward the containment field, his movements deliberate and non-threatening. He had learned from watching his grandmother that sudden motion scared animals, and he suspected the same might be true for dimensional entities. Hello? He said softly, his voice barely above a whisper. I know you can probably hear me. From the observation deck, Dr. So-young held her breath as she watched the young specialist approach the most dangerous artifact in known space. Her instruments showed no change in the cube's energy patterns, but something felt different about the situation. Dong-hyun stopped a few meters from the containment field and sat down cross-legged on the laboratory floor. This was something else his grandmother had taught him. When dealing with a frightened or aggressive creature, make yourself smaller and less threatening. My name is Dong-hyun, he continued, speaking as if he were talking to a nervous animal. I am sorry about what the others have done to you. They were trying to help, but I think they went about it the wrong way. The cube's pulsing remained steady, but the quality of the light seemed to change slightly. Instead of the cold clinical glow it had shown before, there was something warmer about it. Dr. Minho noticed the change in his quantum readings. The dimensional phasing is stabilizing, he whispered to the others in the observation room. Whatever he is doing, it is having an effect. Dong-hyun continued to speak in his calm, gentle voice. I grew up on a farm, you know. We had all kinds of animals there. Some of them were scared when they first arrived, especially if they had been treated badly before. But once they learned that we were not going to hurt them, they became part of the family. The air in the laboratory began to shimmer, but slowly, gently, not with the violent energy they had seen during previous manifestations. The dragon began to appear, its albino form coalescing from the shifting light around the cube. In the observation deck, Commander Jae-min reached for the emergency containment controls, but Dr. Hyun-woo stopped him. Wait, the xenoarchaeologist whispered. Look at its posture. The dragon was manifesting differently than before. Instead of the aggressive, defensive stance they had always seen, it appeared curious, almost cautious. Its massive head tilted, slightly as it regarded the small human sitting peacefully on the floor. Dong-hyun felt his heart race as the magnificent creature materialized before him, but he kept his voice steady and calm. "There you are. You are beautiful, you know that? I have never seen anything like you." The dragon's stellar eyes focused on him with intense curiosity. It lowered its great head closer to the floor, bringing its face level with the human's. "Bet you have been alone for a very long time," Dong-hyun continued. "That must have been difficult. No one should have to be alone for thousands of years." Something amazing happened. The dragon made a sound, but not the threatening roar or harmonic scream they had heard before. It was softer, almost like a question. Dr. So-young's instruments were recording unprecedented readings. The entity's emotional resonance patterns are completely different from anything we have documented. It is showing curiosity, even what might be longing. Dong-hyun slowly reached out his hand, moving with the same careful patience he had used with frightened animals back home. "May I touch you? I promise I will not hurt you." The dragon watched his approaching hand with intense focus. Its eyes, which had burned with anger during previous encounters, now showed something that looked remarkably like hope. When Dong-hyun's hand made contact with the dragon's snout, everything changed. The creature's scales, previously cold and hard as crystal, became warm under his touch. The light that flowed through its body shifted from harsh white to a gentle golden glow. Most remarkably, the dragon pressed its massive head against his small hand and made a sound that could only be described as a purr. "Good boy," Dong-hyun said softly, the words coming naturally as he stroked the creature's scales. "You are such a good boy." The effect was immediate and profound. The dragon's entire body relaxed, its posture changing from cautious wariness to something approaching contentment. The harmonic sound it made was peaceful, almost musical. In the observation deck, Master Controller Velthak stared in disbelief. "Impossible. That creature destroyed my neural crown and nearly killed me. Now it is acting like a domesticated pet." "Not domesticated," Dr. So-young corrected, studying her readings. "Trusted. There is a difference." Dr. Hyun-woo was documenting everything, knowing they were witnessing history. The emotional resonance between them is off the charts. They are forming a genuine bond. Dong-hyun continued to speak to the dragon in his gentle voice, telling it about his home, his family, his work among the stars. The creature listened with obvious intelligence, occasionally making soft sounds that seemed like responses. "Would you like to go back to your cube now?" Dong-hyun asked after they had been together for nearly an hour. "You must be tired." The dragon looked at him with what could only be interpreted as affection, then slowly faded back into the cube, but the quality of light within the artifact remained warm and golden rather than cold and clinical. Dr. Taeho ran a full spectrum analysis on the cube. The energy patterns have completely stabilized. The dimensional phasing is now controlled, rather than chaotic. Commander Jae-min entered the laboratory cautiously, still not quite believing what he had witnessed. "Specialist Dong-hyun, how do you feel?" "Fine, Commander. Better than fine, actually." Dong-hyun stood up, brushing dust off his uniform. "I think he was just lonely." "He? The dragon? I have been thinking of him as Baek. It means white in Korean." Dr. So-young joined them, her instrument readings showing continued stable patterns from the cube. "The entity responds to you in ways we have never seen. It is as if you speak a language it understands." "Not a language," Dong-hyun corrected. "A feeling. My grandmother always said that love is universal, even across species. Maybe it is universal, across dimensions too." Over the following days, Dong-hyun spent hours with Baek, building their relationship and learning to communicate. The dragon would manifest when called, return to the cube when asked, and even seemed to enjoy simple games and interactions. More importantly, Baek began to show protective behavior toward Dong-hyun. When other researchers approached too aggressively or with hostile intentions, The dragon would manifest partially, just enough to send a clear warning message. It is not just obedience, Dr. Hyunwoo observed. This is a genuine partnership between two intelligent beings. Word of the successful bonding spread quickly through the galactic communication networks. For the first time in recorded history, someone had not only controlled a dimensional entity, but had formed what appeared to be a friendship with one. The implications were staggering, and everyone in the galaxy wanted to know how humanity had accomplished the impossible. But Dong Hyun knew the secret was not particularly complicated. Sometimes the most powerful magic was also the simplest. He had treated a frightened, lonely creature with kindness and respect, and that creature had responded with trust and affection. In a galaxy full of advanced technology and complex theories, the answer had been as basic as saying hello and meaning it. The message reached the Galactic Senate in less than a week. Across thousands of star systems, the news spread like wildfire. Humanity had done something that was supposed to be impossible. They had tamed a void shaper, a creature that had resisted control for millions of years. Senator Velkarn of the hegemony of sharp minds stood before the emergency assembly, his crystalline form reflecting the chamber's lights. This changes everything. If humans can control these entities, what does that mean for the balance of power in our galaxy? The ancient Keth ambassador, whose species had ruled star systems since before humans discovered fire, spoke in her whispering voice. In our oldest records, we find mentions of the void shapers. They were considered forces of nature like black holes or supernovas. The idea that any species could form partnerships with them was never considered possible. Back at the research station, Dong Hyun was unaware of the political storm his success had created. He sat in the laboratory with Bayek, who had manifested in partial form, just his head and neck visible above the cube. They had developed a routine of sorts. Dong Hyun would tell stories about his home world, and Bayek would respond with harmonic sounds that seemed to convey emotions. "You would like Harmony Farm," Dong Hyun was saying, gently stroking the dragon's scales. "Wide open spaces, clean air, and lots of different animals to meet. My grandmother would have loved you." Dr. So Young entered the laboratory with a worried expression. "Dong Hyun, we need to talk. Commander Jae-min wants to see you in the briefing room." The briefing room was crowded with people Dong Hyun did not recognize. Military officers from several species, scientists from the most prestigious institutions, and what looked like government officials from across the galaxy. Commander Jae-min looked exhausted. "Specialist Dong Hyun, I would like you to meet some visitors. They have traveled a long way to speak with you." General Thexmore of the Zenthari Empire stepped forward, his forearms clasped formally behind his back. "Young human, you have accomplished something that our greatest beastmasters could not. We wish to learn your methods." "It is not really a method," Dong Hyun replied. "I just tried to be nice to him." The general's mechanical translator seemed to have difficulty with the concept. "Define nice." "Friendly. Kind. I treated him the way I would want to be treated if I was scared and alone." Ambassador Chin-tel from the melodic reaches leaned forward with interest. "This kindness you speak of, can it be taught to others? Can it be replicated?" Dong Hyun thought about it carefully. "I think anyone can be kind if they choose to be, but it has to be real. Bait can sense intentions. He knows the difference between genuine care and manipulation." Dr. Hyunwoo had been documenting every interaction, but even he was struggling to understand the principles involved. The emotional resonance patterns are consistent, but we cannot identify the exact mechanism that creates the bond. "Maybe that is the point," suggested Dr. Minho. "Perhaps some things cannot be reduced to mechanisms and formulas." The questions continued for hours. Every species wanted to know if their people could form similar bonds with void shapers. Military leaders asked about weaponization potential. Scientists inquired about dimensional travel applications. But the most significant moment came when an unexpected visitor arrived. The transport ship that docked with the station was ancient, its hull covered in symbols that predated most known civilizations. The being who emerged was tall and ethereal, with features that seemed to shift between different species' characteristics. I am Keeper Astlin of the Dimensional Archives, the being announced. I have come because of what you have awakened. Commander Jamin looked confused. We have never heard of the Dimensional Archives. That is because we exist between the spaces your species can perceive. We are the guardians of entities like the one you call Beck. Dr. So Young's instruments detected energy patterns similar to those produced by the Dragon Cube. You are connected to the Void Shapers? We were created to tend them, to ensure they remained safely dormant until the galaxy was ready for their return. That time was not supposed to be now. Dong-hyun felt a chill of worry. Are we in trouble? Did we do something wrong? Keeper Astlin studied him with ancient eyes. No, young one. You did something right. Something we did not expect any species to achieve for thousands more years. The Keeper explained that the Void Shapers were not simply powerful creatures. They were bridges between dimensions, living connections to realms of existence that most species could not comprehend. They had been placed in stasis long ago because the galaxy was not mature enough to handle their power responsibly. But this human has shown something we did not anticipate, Astlin continued. He has demonstrated that partnership is possible. Without domination, that power can be shared without conquest. What does this mean for us? Commander Jamin asked. It means the galaxy is changing. Other Void Shapers are beginning to stir, responding to the call of the one you have befriended. Some will seek similar partnerships. Others may not be so trusting. As if summoned by the conversation, Bayek manifested in the briefing room, his ghostly form coiling protectively around Dong-hyun. The dragon's presence caused several of the alien visitors to step back nervously, but Dong-hyun simply reached up to touch his friend's snout. It is okay, Beck. These people are not here to hurt us. The dragon relaxed but remained partially manifested, clearly protective of his human partner. Keeper Astlin observed the interaction with something that might have been approval. Remarkable. The bond is deeper than we initially sensed. This partnership may indeed herald a new age for galactic civilization. Over the following months, reports came in from across the galaxy. Ancient artifacts were awakening. Void Shaper cubes that had been dormant for millennia were beginning to show activity. Some responded to attempts at partnership, while others remained hostile to any approach. Dong-hyun found himself at the center of a new field of study. Xenobiologists and diplomats came to learn from his methods, though few achieved the same level of success. The bond between species, it seemed, required something that could not be easily taught or replicated. Dr. Taeho established a training program based on Dong-hyun's approach, emphasizing empathy, patience, and genuine care over control and domination. Some students showed promise, forming tentative connections with newly awakened entities. But the real change was in how the galaxy viewed power itself. For millions of years, civilizations had believed that strength came from the ability to control others. Humanity had shown that sometimes the greatest power came from earning trust rather than demanding obedience. The phrase "good boy" became legendary throughout the star systems, not as words of dominance but as symbols of a new way of thinking about relationships between different forms of life. Dong-hyun continued to work with Bayek, their partnership deepening as they learned to communicate across the barriers of species and dimension. Together, they represented hope for a galaxy where cooperation might eventually replace conquest, where understanding could triumph over fear. The Albino Dragon Cube that had never been controlled had found something better than control. It had found friendship, respect, and a place in a larger community that valued what it could offer, rather than what could be taken from it. And in a galaxy full of ancient civilizations and advanced technologies, the simple act of treating another, being with kindness, had changed everything. The revolution had begun with 2 words spoken by a young man from a farming colony to a lonely creature that had waited 50,000 years to hear them. Good boy. Sometimes the most powerful force in the universe was also the simplest.